All right, so thank you everybody for coming. This is the Validator panel. And we have an incredible group of panelists representing a huge part of the industry here, so I'm super excited. First, we're going to have everybody introduce themselves really quickly. We only have 25 minutes. There's a lot of very fun and spicy questions, so let's go quick at the introductions. My name is Viktor Bunin. I am the protocol operations lead at Coinbase Cloud.
Hey everyone, my name is Izzy and I'm Master of Validators with Lido.
Hey, I'm Felix Lutsch. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Chorus One.
And I am Darren Langley. I am the General Manager of RocketPool.
Hi, I'm Limaris Torres and I'm a research engineer at Blockdaemon.
Amazing, thanks. And could you guys tell us a little bit about your work with MEV to date?
Okay. So obviously from the perspective of Lido, we are a cross-chain liquid staking protocol with our headquarters on Ethereum. The question of MEV, how are node operators and validators going to extract it and how will they share it with their stakers, basically the customers of Lido as a protocol, is one of the big questions concerning us post-merge. Right now, we're not actively doing anything with it because, as far as I know at least, there's no MEV on the beacon chain yet. Although, who knows what's going to be going on with attestation aggregations in the future. But our worries right now are figuring out like the problem set and the full scope of what kind of MEV activities might there be and how we will organize around the extraction of these rewards, basically, and redistribute them to our users. So we're focusing on technical specifications right now. And then also reaching out to the community, both from a Lido perspective and a general Ethereum perspective, to kind of understand the bounds of what makes sense, how can we do any MEV extraction in an open and transparent manner, and ensure that we're looking after the health of the ecosystem with whatever set of actions we decide to go forward with.
Yeah, I think from our end, so Chorus One is a multi-chain node operator, so we operate nodes on different networks. And we, so far, have mostly kind of taken a kind of first research approach. So internally, we have like a lot of discussions, what should we do with MEV? We have also, for example, participated in the Flashbots working group. We are kind of spending research resources. So we have a pretty big research team and are looking at what is actually happening on these networks first. So I guess Ethereum is the biggest ecosystem of MEV right now, and there's Flashbots, there's a lot of organizations working on this. But for us, as we are on other chains, like Cosmos and Solana, for example, we're trying to focus our research on these chains first to also see is there already things happening on these chains. So one of the things we're doing is we've done some research on sandwiching on Solana, which we will release soon, where we're basically looking at has this happened on Solana and what percentage of the DEX transactions are actually surrounded basically. And we have basically found that this is very little yet because maybe also there's missing fee market and stuff on Solana. But so that's kind of our approach, research first and then figuring out where we're at, what's the best way to engage with the topic. Yeah.
So RocketPool is a decentralized staking protocol. So we have over 1,000 permissionless individual node operators running on the beacon chain today. So we are very interested in pretty much the same thing as Izzy, sharing that MEV with our pool. So node operators actually have half of the collateral and our pool supplies the other half. And so we need to make sure that that is split kind of evenly with them. And making sure that our node operators obviously have a great staking experience and they get the most out of it as well. From our perspective, the health of Ethereum is the utmost principle that we hold most dear. So that is certainly something that we're very, very interested in. That's why we joined the Flashbots working group to make sure that the design is as decentralized as possible and fits within our kind of core tenets. That's me.
Hi, so I'm one of the lead researchers assigned to MEV, and for those of you that don't know Blockdaemon, we have a lot of responsibility right now. Currently powering 36,000 nodes and have 11 billion staked across 50 different protocols. So while this does affect our Ethereum clients, it also affects our clients on other chains. As you're aware, cross-chain MEV is a big deal. That's why we have dedicated resources. We've joined the Flashbots working group, and we're really focused on transparency and ensuring fairness across chains. So we're big on this space. We're here to learn today. We've got representation in the crowd as well, and we really want to find out what the best solution is for our clients. Like, do we let them choose? Do we just force them into this? So I'm happy to talk about this today.
Amazing, amazing. I also didn't realize I didn't share anything about Coinbase Cloud. We are also an infrastructure operator.
Typical.
Yeah, been around since 2018. Run over 60,000 nodes at this point across many different protocols. But super glad to have all of you guys here. I think the first question is, we have like a really wide mix of, quote unquote, customers or users ranging from enterprise to at-home stakers to data analytics companies and so on. Would love to learn about, like, what do your customers think about MEV, feel about MEV? What questions are they asking you? Like, what positions are they taking or asking you to take? Anything you share there would be amazing.
Okay, so from our perspective, like the largest segment of our customers are basically like retail stakers or really large stakers in the form of whales. And generally their question around MEV and MEV rewards is, how can I get a piece of that? Now, what we need to do is like balance this desire basically in order to participate in this externality that exists on these kinds of blockchains with the possible security implications or the like negative sum implications with regards to like what happens on the other end of an MEV transaction and like who's actually losing value when that happens. So understanding not only the desire for users of the network, like users of Ethereum, to be protected against certain kinds of MEV, but also the desire for people who are contributing to the security of the network via liquid staking to be able to participate in those rewards.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think still for many people, it's not like the core topic that they want to discuss. I think many know it's coming and kind of expect probably us to use some kind of software like Flashbots and share the rewards. Obviously, I think that's probably going to be the common theme. I think there's also like many different kinds of customers nowadays. Also, like for example, Lido is in some way, we're a customer of Lido and they contribute stake to us, the DAO. So we're obviously also like trying to align with what do you want, what the network wants, what our team thinks is the right way. So like there's a lot of like interaction with that. And I also think, larger institutional clients, maybe they also have a similar kind of idea of what they want to do. And then we basically just, provide the service to them. It can take that dimension. For like some others, maybe we can try to like engage the community. That's our goal with the research, also to like build a dialogue and find out what our users want. I think depending on the protocol, maybe there can also be like a choice that we provide to the users or different things. I think there's going to be like a lot of innovation in the future, and looking forward to that.
So from RocketPool's perspective, we have liquid stakers because we have a liquid staking token, and we have node operators. Both of those are exactly the same. They would like their yield to go up. So it is definitely a balance. The good thing about, I guess, our community is they are very savvy. They come to RocketPool generally because they care about Ethereum's health. And so that transparency on how we're going to support it, what we will and won't accept, and all of that sort of thing is very, very important.
Yeah, and for us at Blockdaemon, I'd say being so large, we have clients all over the spectrum. So we have like our heavy hitters, our giga nerds who are like all for it and like, yeah, let's enable MEV-boost and do all the things. And then we have our clients that are like, MEV? What? Like, and what do you pair as a side dish with that? And so, it's a little hard because it's our job to kind of chaperone them into this space in a fair way, in a clear way, and gently guide them towards the light and say, okay, so this is what's happening, and these are the stakes, and we believe that it's important to be transparent with everybody. So does everybody want a piece of this or no? And we're kind of discussing internally, like, do we allow it by default, or do we let them choose? And how do we let them choose when they don't even know really what it is? So.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's such a running theme. I mean, so when I worked with Daniel and stuff to start the ETH2, like the Flashbots ETH2 working group, one of the core reasons behind it was the educational component, which is that as infrastructure providers, like, we need to have an opinion first, just because we're the ones like super in the weeds, doing the research and due diligence. And then as we're having these conversations with customers of all various types, it's like, we have to be the educational resource to help them make good decisions, but also we have to understand all the nuances behind all these decisions in order to make sure that the decisions that are made are something that we're comfortable with, right? And that don't harm the network and continue to be good actors. So thank you guys so much for your insights. So post-merge, when validators begin to participate in MEV, do you think that MEV will make home staking more or less viable, and why? Any order, yeah.
So we've got a lot of home stakers. So the majority of our node operators, in fact, I think, well, the majority of them are home stakers. What I'm hoping, which is the reason why we joined the Flashbots working group, is Flashbots' mission to democratize MEV. That's the only way that this is going to work, because everybody has to have access. Everyone has to have access to Ethereum staking, that's what we believe, and everyone has to have access to MEV to maximize those opportunities for themselves and to compete with larger operators. So we're also doing like a MEV smoothing solution, so that home stakers can compete with the larger operators, so that they get a consistent return and they don't have to, because they're proposing less blocks. It's very variable, the returns, and so a smoothing pool actually smooths that out and gives them a constant return. So yeah, we're building out that sort of thing to make sure that MEV isn't a centralizing factor, or it makes them competitive.
Anybody else want to comment? And if not, I have a follow-up. Yeah, so I'd also be super curious, earlier today with Hasu and Robert and other folks, one of the topics that keeps coming up is around how there's a centralizing force for you to desire, as a validator operator, to desire to be on multiple networks and capture, cross-chain MEV. And so how do you think about, enabling home stakers to remain competitive in a world that continues to centralize around having, single infrastructure providers across multiple chains?
Yeah, I think the thing with MEV is bad. It can be bad, but in a centralized world, it's extremely bad. In a decentralized world, it's less bad. So the idea there is to increase participation. The more participation you get in proof of stake, the more the long tail, the less issues you have. And so it's really important to have that operational decentralization and influence control as well, to make sure that doesn't happen. Because MEV in a centralized world is an absolutely terrible place, whereas MEV in a decentralized place is probably bearable.
Yeah, fair, very fair. Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I think the other ways to do that are to try to minimize the problem space, right? So cross-chain MEV is currently possible because most of the transactions are in public mempools, not encrypted, et cetera. So once we see the advent of things like proposal builder separation, or at least relayers sending node operators fully encrypted blocks that they can't see until after the next block, I think the incidence of cross-chain MEV is going to go down. And then the other thing that we can think about is liquid staking protocols and node operators that reach across multiple networks, whether they can put into place policies, let's say, or strategies that disincentivize this kind of behavior potentially. So for example, at Lido, we're currently working on a way to propose a policy to the community and the DAO, and then the DAO would basically drive what that policy is with regards to how will node operators extract MEV and then share those rewards with stakers. But also, if there's pieces of the policy, for example, if you're operating a node for Lido, you will not be building your own blocks. During that proposal period, you will only be obtaining blocks from an open builder marketplace. And it's a lot more difficult it's a lot easier for node operators to take advantage of the fact that they're on multiple networks and have that shared information than for a builder to do that across multiple networks.
Super interesting. That actually leads right into my next question. And this is predominantly for folks from Izzy from Lido, Darren from RocketPool. is when deciding how to participate in MEV, how do you think about mandating all block producers in your ecosystem to adopt a single approach like Flashbots versus leaving it to individual node operators?
So we have probably a technical thing that we have to go with a single approach, not necessarily a single vendor. So it could be Flashbots and somebody else, but we have to essentially whitelist who they are. The main thing about that is MEV is quite pernicious in the sense that it's very difficult to track whether somebody is getting side payments for it. So they might produce a block, but they might have gotten a side payment. So the only way really we can do it is to whitelist block relayers probably. We'll see how that works, but certainly relayers to say, did you propose that block? And then we have crypto-economic mechanisms because we're permissionless. All of our node operators come to us and we can't control who they are. So from our perspective, we have to have crypto-economic mechanisms to enforce that they do the right thing. And their incentives are aligned. So in our case, we have to essentially ask the relayer, did you propose that block? If they didn't, then we know we can punish them. Otherwise, we can't. We should reward them. But yeah, so that's our approach. They will be locked into particular approaches, but they might not be locked into particular vendors.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. It's a lot easier to verify that somebody has followed the correct approach rather than verifying that they didn't cheat. And from our perspective, I think it'll be similar. There'll be a couple of approaches that eventually the DAO will basically ratify that these approaches are okay. But we might be able to do like kind of experiments with regards to what approaches there are. So obviously, certain approaches might be like, let's use MEV-boost. Let's use a certain whitelist of relayers that's maintained potentially by a third party or reviewed by the DAO on a continuous basis. Or if there's other competing solutions, like maybe it's good if there's a marketplace of possible solutions. But the other interesting thing is maybe we can do things where a certain percentage of validators are engaged in MEV minimization experiments. So there's a team called Shutter, I think, that's like running an experiment on whether they can use commit reveal schemes like on Gnosis chain. Perhaps we could run an experiment to see if that works on Ethereum.
Yeah, super interesting. I'd actually, maybe a follow-on question for Felix. You mentioned some of the work that you guys were doing on Solana and the research around there. I'd be super curious to hear about, what are you seeing from like the validator side around, what other validators are thinking, how, work is going in terms of MEV mitigation in the Solana ecosystem, and what you guys are doing there.
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic. I think, for one, right, the Solana fee market and everything's very different from the one in Ethereum. So it's also not that possible that easily to kind of build the same system that Flashbots is building with the bundles and everything. Kind of even you have to build the fee mechanism first, basically. So right now, I think there are a few teams working on this. There's Gito, which we have been also close in touch with, where they're basically trying to bring this bundles model to Solana. I think others are just, maybe not that aware of it yet too. And then there is, for us, it was more, it started coming up like later, right? Obviously, like Ethereum DeFi is probably like 1 year older, and I guess it's kind of just a reflection of what happened on Ethereum is probably going to happen on these other chains. So we're like one stage earlier, I would say. And for us, it was more about like just researching first, how is it actually looking right now? What are the solutions? And I think also Solana Foundation is doing a bunch of work to, build like this fee market out to improve the situation, because obviously we know some of these, the existence of MEV and the non-existence of the fee market have led to like kind of performance degradation on Solana. So I guess there is a need for a solution. So obviously like there's a lot of work is going into that, and we want to like contribute to that too, to improve the chain in the end, which is always the goal.
Amazing. Thanks so much for sharing. And maybe Limaris, if I can pass it over to you as well. You guys do some great work within Avalanche and other ecosystems as well as Blockdaemon. We'd love to hear about kind of like what are you seeing from those ecosystems around MEV, either strategies or mitigations, or how are people thinking about it, and how does that compare to maybe some of the things you heard on stage?
Right, so I think the theme is the same across the board. We're all trying to figure that out, and we're all trying to figure that out together. And at Blockdaemon, you know, we understand that we're chain agnostic, and so we're partnering with different foundations, and different foundations do have different approaches, right? Here we have Flashbots with MEV-boost, and that's an excellent idea, but on Avalanche, we don't necessarily have an equivalent yet, and so on other chains, we're waiting on that guidance to see what is it that the foundations want first, because at the end of the day, it's their chains that they're building, and then how can we at Blockdaemon support that ecosystem, and then think about it from a client perspective as well, and then how can we provide maybe a solution for our clients if they do want to participate in MEV in that specific chain. So it's very complicated, and that's why we have several engineers on MEV, because when you're doing this across 50 different protocols, and granted it doesn't work on 50 different protocols, but when we have such a large ecosystem here, there's a lot of variations in how it happens across chains.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, we're definitely seeing that as well on the Coinbase Cloud side. So one of the consistent themes that has been coming up is this notion of maybe like, not so much that nobody wants to take the lead, but people want to see what the community is rallying around like design choices, around like how we should be implementing things, like what we should be supporting. So this is maybe like a question that not everybody has a perfect answer to that is final, but maybe you can just share how you're leaning. And so the question is, how would you distribute your MEV profits? And so, one of the, is it something that's going to be kind of like pro rata? So if you're charging a percentage fee, let's say it's going to be the same percentage fee as what you're charging on, the inflationary rewards and transaction fees as one option, or it could be something else as well.
Yeah, so at Blockdaemon, sorry, you guys were hogging this, so I'm getting my time in while I still can. Yeah, so at Blockdaemon, we're discussing similar to the current pricing model, which is we make our commission. And what we'll do is we'll calculate the MEV profits into our commission, and we make that kind of frictionless for the customers. And then they keep their rewards, obviously, but we're operating on their behalf, so it's pretty fair to the ecosystem. Again, that is not final. Do not quote me. CEO, if you're watching, I know we're still discussing.
So from RocketPool's perspective, we're not going to do anything because we don't touch MEV, but our node operators do. So our node operators already have a commission, and half of their collateral is actually, so 16 ETH is their collateral for that they use, so, and 16 ETH is from our pool. So essentially it's a 50-50 split, but the node operator gets a little bit more because they have the commission. So it kind of ends up being about 60%, 40%, something like that. And that will hold going forward as well. So RocketPool, we don't take anything, but our node operators who are doing all the work, they get the commission. And the rest of it goes to our RETH holders, who are liquid staking holders. So it's essentially a 50-50 split.
Yeah, I guess, very interesting question, right? That's kind of the core of your business, or how do you attract your delegators in the end also. And I think MEV really opens up a new dimension of kind of pricing models in a way for validators or node operators, which is quite interesting. I think there's still a lot experimentation to do, and I think leaning towards that model, we share it the same way is probably the right one, but I could also see, I guess in Cosmos, there was a long time this, some people experimenting with zero fees first, right? Just go low and then later raise it. And I can see there's going to be a lot of experimentation there. Maybe some people will say you get all the MEV, but we charge a high commission on the inflationary rewards, or any kind of combination of that. And I think that will also lead to a more differentiated validator space, which is then obviously also good. So as for Chorus One, I guess we'll figure out where we go there, but probably will be some kind of simple, straightforward approach. Or if a certain customer maybe wants something specific, then we could accommodate that and work it out with them, what they want to achieve for their users, or So then we'll go with that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. From a Lido perspective as well, this is going to be one of the things that comes out of whatever policy Lido as a DAO ends up having around MEV. I think the simplest approach, both technically and from a UX perspective, and ultimately that's what you want to do, give a simple product to the staker, is pro rata fee similar to staking rewards. The question is, once we have permissionless node operators within Lido as well, what do you do when they start cheating the system? And what kind of disincentivization mechanisms will we have in place? to deal with that and like pernicious MEV, weird MEV that may be pushing reorgs and things like that. So that's a separate like problem space that we'll probably address a bit later.
Super interesting. Do any of you folks think about how, MEV profits that y'all, well, so, sorry, we're leaning, we're also here. I think right now, Coinbase Cloud doesn't have an official policy, but, I think the pro rata distribution makes the most sense. You want to keep everybody aligned. You want to continue being as fair as possible. One question I have for all of you is, how do you think about the use of MEV profits in public goods funding? Like, is this something you folks have discussed, whether it's part of your DAOs communities or something like Gitcoin or something else?
I think public goods funding is a fantastic idea. The problem that's holding us back is we live in a competitive landscape. So if we did that, we might lose some of our competitive edge. So that is something that we have to be quite mindful of. But I agree. Ideally, we would put it into some sort of public goods.
Yeah, I would say on Blockdaemon's behalf, we're huge on helping build the ecosystem. So I'm not sure exactly what we would do for public goods, but we have done stuff in the past, like with the Terra Foundation. They had given us a grant to start running some of their nodes and validators, and we were the, one of the first people to help build that ecosystem, and eventually we made a profit, and we gave all their grant money back. With the Ethereum Foundation, we're giving cloud credits right now for them to test all of their stuff on their network. And if we don't do something maybe for like a general public socioeconomic cause, I'm sure that we'll still continue giving back to the different chains much in the way that we already have been doing.
Yeah, that's a great point. So a quick little time check. We have 10 minutes left. And these next two questions are spicy. So as folks here know, MEV-boost is going to be separating out the block builders from block proposers. And so validators will be accepting blocks from a third party and proposing them without necessarily seeing the contents. What are the criteria by which you're planning to select which block builder you'd like to receive blocks from?
What other criteria are we going to be given by the relayers and like whatever solution is around at that time? So like a lot of the specs aren't fully finished on this stuff, right? The easiest way to look at it is, I guess, like what's the total value of the block and what percentage of that value is going to be the MEV reward attributable to it. I don't think that's sustainable enough as a long-term solution. I think, especially when you consider like possible censorship attacks in the future, even in like a post-relay model where you have PBS at the core layer, we have to be able to ensure that somehow like these fully encrypted blocks aren't being used to either push transactions like later on into the future or to censor participants. And we're going to need to have some sort of introspective ability either into the contents or have other attributes surfaced next to the encrypted payload to be able to make those decisions and kind of understand if the builder is being like a good builder or a bad builder.
Yeah, I think kind of similar, right? Like in the end, using this kind of tool like MEV-boost is kind of outsourcing that building to someone else in a way that we don't have to make the choice anymore, which probably, as we say, like different areas of expertise maybe lay with different people or different actors. So I guess in some sense, that's what you're signing up for if you do that. And then it's kind of on the protocol that does that building or that to figure that out in some way. And I think we would obviously contribute to that if we use that and try to help them. I would guess that is kind of where we go from, because it's also very hard to judge like which is now good, bad transaction if you're like trying to like build an infrastructure business. So maybe that's not where you should focus on, and like some other actor does that, and then you kind of rely on them and you kind of support them. I think that would be the ideal model. And obviously we dedicate a certain part of our research organization to also look into that, but kind of it's probably not the core area. I would almost say that we have to make that call in a way.
Yeah, so I'll save you here. So at Blockdaemon, our research team is trying to come up with what that criteria is going to be, and we're leaning heavily on like Flashbots and other foundations to kind of say what is the standard, and look at what everybody else in the community is doing. it's difficult too in our position because we do have a lot of institutional clients, and the needs not only from the chains are different, but the needs from the clients are different. So variables to like the nth degree and complication times all of these variables to like the nth degree, and you know there's all these different variations that we have to consider. But definitely on Ethereum specifically, I do like the idea of MEV-boost, and I do like where the Flashbots research kind of standard is going.
Yeah, with RocketPool, we're very acutely aware of the health of Ethereum because that's kind of where we come from, and some sort of feedback loop on actions taken by builders and the ramifications on Ethereum. That's kind of what we need. We need that feedback loop. We need that transparency. A categorization of MEV is quite difficult. Because there isn't necessarily, sometimes there's bad MEV, sometimes there's good MEV, but most of it sits in this kind of grey area in the middle. So it's very difficult to kind of categorize and say this is good, this is bad. But we do need some sort of feedback loop to make sure that we are heading in the right direction and that we are not using builders that are putting Ethereum at risk. Also, builder centralization is going to be a huge issue. That's one of our kind of top concerns. Builder centralization, or how that market is built, is going to be very, very important going forward. So how do we, how can we dissipate the builder market is going to be really important.
I'm excited to see what's going to happen though. Like, I feel like all of us here are speculating, kind of guessing. And at the end of the day, nobody really knows for sure. We don't have a magic ball, but I'm hoping that whatever direction we lean towards works, because that's really the fundamental issue here.
Yeah, and I think maybe that goes into a little follow-on. So Limaris, I'll ask you, but it just as much applies probably to Felix and me. But you know, you have a lot of, Blockdaemon has a lot of enterprise clients, right? One of them is JP Chase. And you know, kind of like what happens when JP Morgan comes along and says, hi, we'd like to exert control or exert some sort of censorship or you know, have some kind of criteria by which we're participating in these ecosystems and producing blocks. It's like, how do you think about the trade-offs there between enabling some amount or potentially like considering enabling some amount of censorship versus serving your clients versus serving the protocol? Like, it's a complicated set of trade-offs. I'd love your take on it.
Yeah, so I'm going to say that is above my pay grade. And that is definitely not a decision to make, but our approach will definitely, at the end of the day, we only exist because of our customers, right? And I feel like a lot of the community here tries to make TradFi the bad guy, and TradFi is not the bad guy. You realize we literally all win. Like, if TradFi buys millions of Ethereum, like, we literally all win. So, we're going to help our clients. TradFi does have, a little bit of friction here. And I know that we like to make it degens versus chads and everything, but I don't necessarily think it has to be that way. I think decentralization, the whole point is to make room for everybody and for, allowing growth for all the players. So while it is a worry personally that I have that all this big money is coming in and, shout out to all the hedge funds in the crowd, Bain Capital, I see you. But, I am worried about where this is going to go and what direction this is going to take us. But someone internally will make that call.
Yeah.
What about you at Coinbase?
Yeah, Coinbase first.
Put you on the
Coinbase
spot here.
first.
I'll go. Felix, do you want to go first? Or?
Yeah, I can go. Coinbase last. Best for last.
No dodging.
I think, in the end, I think it's a lot about educating our clients. So our approach has always been, we understand these networks very well, and we work with them to achieve their goal and their success, and we know what's best for the health of the network because we're so deep in that. And I think if they would come and say, you have to sandwich everyone, obviously that makes the chain shitty, and then we would say, then your token is going down. You should probably invest in the health of that and kind of support a more sustainable model. Ultimately, I think we would advocate for that. Though of course there is certainly a force that would be maybe you lose the client and you have to kind of balance that. But I think also in general, I guess our clients would value that about us, so we would lean on that and try to work that out. So I would guess that's our approach.
What about you, Coinbase? What are you telling your clients?
Don't worry. I'm going next. I do agree. This is definitely like a very difficult question. I think that one of the ways in which we see ourselves at Coinbase Cloud is that, like, if you think about kind of like layers of the stack, then like the higher up the stack that you go, the more opinionated you become, right? So if you're like a social media company versus like a Cloudflare, right? And we think of ourselves as very, very low in the stack, and so we try to be unopinionated. And so we essentially have a different choice around what we do for our own infrastructure, right? So the Coinbase Cloud branded validators that we run versus our customers' nodes, where our customers have full control over what they do with them, right? We're just providing the infrastructure. And so I don't have a perfect answer either. I don't think way above my pay grade for sure. But I think what I will say is that one of the things we take a lot of pride in is educating the people that we work with and support, right? Educating our customers and being a resource for them. We have a team of protocol specialists that specialize in empowering our customers with that information. And so what we try to do is always bring it back to the holistic picture around like what is long-term healthy for the network. And it's as she said, like if you're running, if you have a lot of ETH or you're running a lot of validators or any other network, you want it to be successful long-term. And so we help them formulate strategies around how to ensure that.
Yeah, that's why Viktor and I, we're friends. It's community, not competition. We call it co-opetition.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think here, actually, like this is at all of our pay grades. And by that, I don't mean like us specifically that, who work with staking or validators or node operators, but every participant in the Ethereum ecosystem. So our job, like Felix said earlier, is to use the deep knowledge that we have in this space to educate every current participant and future participant about the possible pernicious effects and consequences of what happens when these things centralize, what happens when we open the doors to possible censorship, so that all users, as stewards of this network, would make these kinds of choices by large investors in the network, by governments, an untenable proposition. So we need to keep doing things like this, which is talking about them in the open, providing like educational efforts. Like MEV is great, yeah, because rewards are going to go up, but here's the other side of it. And making sure that users are making informed decisions for the long-term health of the ecosystem and Ethereum. Because at the end of the day, if we end up like censoring things, then Ethereum is not going to be decentralized. And as a project, it'll fail. And long-term, the value is also going to dwindle.
Amazing. Well, we're out of time. Thank you, everyone, so much. You've been amazing. Thank you, audience. Have a good one.
Thank you, Viktor.
Thank you.